Justin Peach. We said the Easter weekend was going to decide a lot of things, and it's done just that. Most importantly, the top two race is over and done with. Burnley and Leeds have been promoted. We wanted it to go tight until the final day, but they've got it done with 2 games to go.
Yep, done it superbly as well. I think when you consider the fact that both teams have had respective wobbles, they've been through it. And they've come over it. Leeds more recently, and Burnley probably in the first half of the season, actually. But yeah, they got through their troubles this season, and they've got promoted, and they've done it fairly emphatically. You can't disregard any achievements because they've both been incredibly consistent.
Yeah, we'll have a detailed chat about both their promotions and how we think they'll do back in the Prem very shortly. But crack open an egg. Let's have a chat about the Championship with the old pals here at the second tier. And we'll start with that game at Turf Moor because Burnley have won promotion to the Premier League by winning their big 6-pointer against Sheffield United 2-1. The Burnley players knew what they had to do in this one, Justin, and they did it superbly.
Yeah, they killed the game when it needed to be killed. I thought this was peak Burnley in this game. They nullified the threats in the second half. I thought Gus Hamer was really enjoying himself in the first half, but second half didn't really see him. Solid structure and whatever blades through at them attackers wise, it felt like they had the entire attacking repertoire of the division on in the last 10 minutes. With Brewster came on, Campbell came on, there was Ben Berger, Diaz, Tom Cannon, anyone you could name, they tried. Burnley dealt with. And
Rob Hulse,
Darius Henderson,
Billy Sharp,
Danny Webber. But yeah, I just think this was just Burnley at their absolute best this season. I think you could argue maybe more quality and better decision making in the final third would have made this a more comfortable scoreline. But second half, it just never felt like Sheffield United were going to score, and they secured promotion doing it. Brilliant.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Justin. They managed the game brilliantly, didn't they? And whatever you think of Scott Parker, you can't deny his record in games like this is absolutely phenomenal. 10 points won from a possible 12 against the other top 3 sides this season is just remarkable, isn't it? And they never seem to be in any serious danger of losing that lead in the second half. I thought they defended excellently. Maxime Esteve was ridiculously good. Genuinely, probably the best individual performance I've seen from a player this season. I genuinely think he was that good. He made so many important challenges and blocks and what have you. But Burnley as a whole were just unrelenting. And I enjoyed Hannibal Mejbri celebrating winning the penalty by standing right in front of Conor Hodges' face. That was funny. And then the scenes at the final whistle, the roar from the Burnley fans, not so sure what was happening at the end with some of the players clashing, but that shouldn't take away from what was a brilliant performance from Burnley. And Burnley are back in the Premier League again, Justin. It's been looking like that was going to be the case basically over this Easter weekend, wasn't it, after Sheffield United's mini collapse a couple of weeks ago. But you are, of course, Scott Parker's number one fan nowadays, so here's your chance to lavish some praise on them and the job he's done.
I'm so glad you handed the baton over to me with this one. I just think the promotion's been emphatic. You can argue they probably drew too many games in the first half of the season, but that's been put to the side, and they got that winning feeling quite quickly. But Ryan, they've accrued 94 points so far this season. That was more than Scott Parker's Bournemouth team in the 21-22 season, which I think arguably had better players in. And that's also more points. 94 is more points than 9 of the last 10 seasons for teams finishing second. Ipswich last year had 96, which Burnley could still beat. They've lost 2 games all season. They're unbeaten at home. They also had the best championship defence ever. They set an EFL record, 29 clean sheets. That's not just championship, that's an EFL record. 72 teams, etc. I think even if Leeds finishes champions, I would argue this has been one of the most impressive promotions that I've seen. It's just been remarkable. And again, Scott Parker, I think, deserved a little bit of criticism in the first third of the season because there was an ounce of fortune there. They were really, really bland, really boring. But as the season has progressed, I think he's adapted those tactics to the style of play and embraced that conservatism a little bit more. And I think that's been the main thing for Burnley. They're not Vincent Kompany's Burnley, they're Scott Parker's Burnley. And I've really, really enjoyed the second half of the season. I think he deserves a hell of a lot of praise for it. Potentially manager of the season, but more on that another week.
I'm not even going to comment about that last point. But look, I've made my feelings about Scott Parker and Burnley known this season. They've unsurprisingly not changed, but I'm making this a negativity-free zone for the next few minutes because promotion is always a great achievement, no matter how you do it. And yes, they've had to grind it out on a number of occasions, but the simple numbers behind this promotion are pretty ridiculous. We will never, ever see another team concede as few goals as this Burnley side. It's as simple as that. 17 goals for the season. That is just a mad amount. I don't think anyone will ever come close to getting that number ever again, but it's been the bedrock for their promotion. That's been the main reason why they've only lost 2 games all season. That's been the main reason why they'll equal the championship record for the longest unbeaten run if they don't lose their last 2 games. And that's why they've not really had a poor run of form all season. The only one they've had is where they won 3 points from 4 back at the end of October. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a bad run of form all season, you won't be too far away from promotion usually, Justin.
No, they wouldn't. And again, they've had 12 goalless draws this season, and 15 of their 26 wins so far this season have been by 1 goal. So it's been tight, but it's been defensive stability, and you are right. That defensive stability, I think, has been the reason why they haven't had too many bad runs of form. And like you said, I think this is the important thing you need to really mention. I don't think we'll see a better defence like this. And yeah, I know everyone wants to be entertained. They want to see goals. That's all they want. But sometimes want to see clean sheets as well. And bloody hell, Burnley provided that. It's just been ridiculous. And yeah, I think that defensive stability has been the key thing. And that's something we can revel in. That's entertaining as it is. I think we've been, as consumers of football, told that goals is the way forward. But I think, there are other ways of winning games that you've got to appreciate and embrace a little bit sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. It depends which way you look at it. But yeah, the defensive record, I think, is the only thing you can really hone in on here, because the performances of CJ Egan-Riley, who, by the way, he was a bit of a cast-off, really, wasn't he, at Burnley before? And I don't think many Burnley fans would have been too surprised if he left last summer. But he's just been a revelation this season. Maxime Esteve cost a fair bit of money, so you'd expect him to be good, but he's been even better than I think anyone expected. And as I've said previously, I think will go on to be a top player. James Trafford has been busier than I think people give him credit for. He's had to make some important saves along the way and has just shown why he is such a top keeper. And we won't be seeing him in the Championship for a long time. I'm pretty sure about that. So those 3 in particular deserve so much praise, but the likes of Josh Brownhill, Josh Cullen, Connor Roberts, etc., they all deserve a lot of praise as well. But that holy trinity at the back have really been the ones who have basically got this promotion over the line for Burnley, because they have just been unbelievable from the get-go. And so here we are, Justin. It's been confirmed Burnley will be back in the Premier League next season. But the big question is, how will they get on this time around? What do you think, Justin? I think you were quite positive on their chances last time we spoke about it, weren't you?
I was. It's mainly because they're defensively minded way of thinking now, I think, is that will suit being in the Premier League a lot better than teams who attack. I think there is a couple of caveats. So obviously, Scott Parker's record in the Premier League is pretty poor. His last game in the Premier League was a 9-0 defeat as manager of Bournemouth, and things imploded very, very quickly down on the south coast. But I think things are maybe a little bit different. I think Scott Parker has learned a fair bit over the past couple of spells he's had in the top flight. But I think defensive football could allow Burnley to adapt a lot better. I think they need better wingers. I think if you bring in Marcus Edwards permanently, a physical number 9, because obviously having Zian Fleming as a bit of a false 9, I don't think will work for the entirety of a Premier League season. Likewise, Lyle Foster's not really got running in a Burnley shirt, amongst others. I think that would give them a better chance of staying up than the 3 that have come down this season. So I'm not saying they will definitely stay up. I'm saying they will adapt a lot better than teams that we've seen in the past.
Just so we're all aware, I'm ending the negativity-free zone now. I'm certain they'll come straight back down.
Wow.
Because with the much publicised gap between the Premier League and Championship growing, it's becoming increasingly difficult to see any teams staying up in the foreseeable future, but I find it especially difficult with this Burnley team. As I said recently, I believe they're one of the poorest sides I've seen get automatically promoted. That's not changed. They're definitely not as good as the team who got promoted under Vincent Kompany, and they got absolutely battered in the Prem. Maybe there were some other circumstances surrounding that, but the point still remains. I think if you are going to stay up, you need a team that is Premier League ready, so you can then top it up over the summer with some more Premier League talent. And aside from a handful of players, I don't think this Burnley team is Premier League ready, unfortunately. And their recruitment the last time they got promoted doesn't fill me with confidence that they'll get it right this time around. And then, of course, there's Scott Parker, a manager with a very poor record in the Premier League. They've had a number of occasions this season where he's struggled to break teams down in the Championship. And if you're struggling to do that in the Championship, just wait until you're coming up against Premier League defences each week. Yeah, it's going to get a lot harder. So, unsurprisingly, I hold out very little hope for Burnley staying up. I don't think that's a big surprise to Burnley fans, me saying that. When I said that before, I actually had a lot of Burnley fans agreeing with me on that bit. So, sorry for pissing on your birthday cake, Burnley fans, as soon as it's been brought out, but that's just the reality of the situation. Justin, what do you think?
It's hard to disagree. It really is. It's annoying. But I think what you do have to remember is that gap between the Championship and the Premier League has grown quite significant over the past 3 or 4 years. You look at Nottingham Forest when they stayed up. The first season that they went up, obviously got promoted via the playoffs, they spent £100 million. Aston Villa, when they went up, spent over £100 million. You have to really, really take a risk with your spending or have your recruitment on point if you're going to stay up, because Brentford are the other example where they didn't spend millions and millions and millions like other teams, but their recruitment model was just out of this world, that they were able to, and obviously Thomas Frank's an incredibly gifted coach as well. I don't think Burnley's recruitment is on point. I think that's one thing, and I don't think they're going to be willing to spend over £100 million to stay in the Premier League either. There needs to be a lot of improvements, not only with the squad. Obviously, we need to see Scott Parker maybe adopt a slightly more, I wouldn't say adventurous mindset with his team, but they have to take risks in the Premier League, which I don't think they did in the Championship. But also, recruitment's the main thing. Recruitment will get them very, very far. And what we've seen over the last 2 years is recruitment's fine in the Championship, but in the Premier League, not so much.
We shouldn't forget, not only does this result secure promotion for Burnley and Leeds, who we'll talk about shortly, but it also, of course, means Sheffield United have officially missed out on automatic promotion and will be competing in the playoffs in a few weeks' time. Since the start of November, Justin, Sheffield United were outside of the automatics for just 8 of the last 32 games. So, when you keep that in mind, a very disappointing end result for them that they've not got up automatically.
Yeah, it is. It's mainly because they had it in their hands 3 games ago. No, they were. I wouldn't say they were comfortable, but it was in their hands 3 games ago, and they completely lost their heads. That's what I feel with Sheffield United. You know, that Oxford result really, the ripple effect, I think, from that game was just felt through the club. It went through to Chris Wilder, the players, and then the fans, and I think that really impacted the next few weeks. So I think that's the most disappointing thing, but it's the fact that they've got to go again, and I don't think they're going into the playoffs, I think, in the best mindset either, because of how this has unfolded. But, I've seen a lot of sort of Sheffield United fans fairly upbeat on social, and I hope that sort of resounds all the way through to the club, because I think the last thing Sheffield United need now is hotheads. It needs to be cool, stay cool.
Yeah. Well, you're right, Justin. To kind of echo your point just then, it's really hard to ignore that 1 week where they lost 3 from 3, isn't it, against Oxford, Millwall and Plymouth, of all teams. Because that 1 week has just killed their season. You can't afford to slip up at this stage of a season, and they didn't just slip up. They kind of did a backflip and landed straight on their face, because I think Chris Wilder's got to take a lot of blame for that. I don't think he handled the situation very well, particularly after the Oxford game, where the Sheffield United fans were having a go at the players and he came fighting about that. The players have to take a lot of blame as well for the way they've just not handled the pressure particularly well. They were in the driving seat for promotion, really, weren't they? And then they've almost handed it to Burnley and Leeds. So now they need to dust themselves down, go again, and be ready for the playoffs. They'll be the strong favourites for the playoffs. Don't get me wrong about that. Possibly even the strongest favourites we've seen in a long time. But picking yourself back up after such a disappointing end to a campaign is a lot easier said than done. You just have to ask Leeds that. So that's Chris Wilder's task now, and that's a big test for him, isn't it, Justin?
Well, yeah, it's all about the reaction. They obviously know it's the playoffs, and managing emotions will be important, which I alluded to. They've not done particularly well in the last few weeks. I think even in this game against Burnley, there've been more red flags there over the past sort of 2 or 3 weeks than has been all season. So the response to this scenario where they've now lost out on automatic promotion is really, really important. I think they've got to go out and win the next 2 games, really calm the nerves of the players. Chris Wilder's got to have full belief in his players, and the fans have got to feel that they are relaxed heading into the playoffs, because I think if you don't manage your emotions very well, and like I said, we saw that in the Burnley game. We saw Ahmedhodzic give away a ridiculous penalty because I think, adrenaline's there, isn't it? His defender doesn't make too many mistakes. He made a mistake there. And then you've got them getting involved with Hannibal, and he's absolutely lapping it up, blah, blah, blah. There are examples in that, the most recent game against Burnley. So it's all about managing the emotions, getting that right, and getting the reaction right as well, heading into the Bristol City game on next Monday.
Well, Leeds have, of course, been promoted as well, and they did it in some style by slapping Stoke 6-0. Leeds were absolutely rampant here, Justin, weren't they?
It was brutal. Rampant, I don't think is particularly sort of sells it enough. It was almost psychological torture. It's like, oh yeah, we could just beat you 3-0. Nah, we're going to fuck you up. That's what it felt like. It was completely unnecessary. But you know what? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, I always say when a scoreline gets to anything over 5 goals, it's a mix of one team being brilliant and one team being terrible. And while Leeds were brilliant, Stoke definitely made sure they lived up to their side of the bargain, because some may say they're on the beach. I would say it's more of a case of them being on a completely different planet. They were absolutely pathetic, but this was Leeds at their absolute best. They were absolutely merciless. Joel Piro's probably helped himself to the golden boot after scoring 4 in this one, but every player was just tremendous, and Leeds could even afford to throw on Archie Gray's 16-year-old brother Harry for his first team debut as well. So yeah, brilliant afternoon for Leeds, and then it was topped off superbly with Burnley doing them a favour later on, and then the pictures we saw of the players celebrating at Ellen Road afterwards. Yeah, I think there may be a few sore heads this morning down up at that way. But yeah, they did it, Justin. They did it. Leeds didn't fall apart in the end, despite them threatening to do so. And they've been promoted back to the Premier League for the first time in 35 years in front of fans. So when you think about it like that, a great achievement, Justin.
That's I completely forgot. I mean, I know they last went up in the COVID year, and obviously all the fans formed outside Ellen Road, not socially distant. I completely forgot about that. I think that's a really, really special thing. I really, really do, especially for supporters who, over the past 30 years have been through it. It's an incredible thing. But like you said, they didn't fall apart in the end. The cracks formed, but they dealt with it. It was like that viral guy who slapped, he slapped tape. The guy who slapped tapes onto big leaks and then immediately stopped the leaks. Have you ever seen those videos?
Yeah.
That was Leeds. They put the tape on the cracks and the leaks stopped. And they've got to do this in front of their fans. So I think it's a really, really impressive feat that they've done this despite a really, really obvious wobble.
Yeah, no idea where you were going for half of that, but then you got back on track in the end. I like that. Well done. Kind of like Leeds' season, really. Because, let's be honest, it would have been absolutely criminal for Leeds to miss out on automatic promotion again. So for everyone's sanity, I'm glad that they've done it. And they've done it by definitely being the best team in the league this season for me. Yes, they could have killed off some games better. Yes, their away record has been a bit up and down, but their minor blemishes on the team who have without a doubt been the most dominant this season, and to bounce back after last season, particularly after losing 2 of the most talented players the Championship has ever seen in the summer, that should be recognised. So, yeah, they still had a squad which should be getting promoted, but that's easier said than done. And a lot of players there will feel like they've exercised some demons from the previous 2 seasons. And Daniel Farke's also probably saved his job, which is obviously a good thing for him. So, yeah, a marvellous achievement for Leeds.
Yeah, there's a few ways you can look at this. I think firstly, Daniel Farke has achieved another promotion at this level, and it's likely. I say it's likely they could well go on to win the league. And obviously, it could just come down to goal difference, but they could go on to win the league. They could finish with 100 points, which I think is an incredible season. So there's conversation there for Daniel Farke being one of the best in the Championship ever. As a manager, despite this Leeds team being blessed with a hell of a lot of talent and a good amount of financial resource. But also, I think, look at the players. Ethan Ampadu was on tears in the Wembley pitch last year. Everyone felt it. And, like you said, those demons have been exercised. Joel Pirro, I think, the way he put his goals away against Stoke, there's a player there who I think has been on the other end of some, I wouldn't say some bad misses, but there are times where he could have killed games himself, and he hasn't. He's done that in this game completely alone. So there are several ways you can look at it, but the way Leeds have done this, the way Leeds have been promoted, a very, very good defence, by the way. They're still 1 goal away from that Championship record that was obliterated by Burnley. Obviously, the least amount of goals conceded is 30. Leeds are on 29 right now. So they could still break the record themselves if it wasn't for Burnley being absolute freaks of nature defending their own goal. So again, that's incredible in itself. So there are so many different ways you can look at it. There's no point going into sort of financial resource or anything like now. Leeds have achieved promotion. They've done it by bouncing back from a playoff final defeat as well, which is a hard thing to get over, especially in the manner in which they lost. And they responded to a lot of, I wouldn't say critics, but certainly people who grew sceptical as the season developed.
Yeah, and I think one other thing you've got to say about Leeds is if you go through every player in that team, every player is a contender for player of the season, apart from Elon Meslier in goal. But I think that is a big achievement in itself, and it goes to show that this is just a big team effort from Leeds. Last season, they were fairly reliant on individuals at times. Not necessarily a bad thing, but that was the case. This season has been more about the whole team effort, as you say, Justin, because you talked about the defensive record there. But going forwards as well, they have been absolutely frightening at times, easily the best team in the league in attack. So they've been the all-round package this season, and that's something that deserves to be recognised. But on to the big question, Justin. How will Leeds United do back in the Premier League? We've said a lot that the gap between the Championship and Premier League makes it a bit difficult to, see teams actually staying up. But I feel a bit more confidence with Leeds heading into the Premier League than Burnley, for example.
Why are you more confident with Leeds than Burnley? I think the defensive qualities of Burnley are certainly going to fare a lot better than Leeds, and obviously Daniel Farke's record in the Premier League isn't.
But Leeds' defensive record is pretty good as well, as we were just saying. But Leeds are also, they can do it going forwards as well. Okay.
No, it's fine. I think they need to add a hell of a lot more quality, similar to Burnley, really. They can't attack like they do in the Championship. They will get punished in the Premier League. I think a good example is Jayden Bogle having an incredible season. But he will almost certainly get exposed for his defensive qualities, or inequalities, I should say, in the Premier League. I feel this squad does need a lot adding to it. I think for it to be more competitive. I don't think it's a team that came down a couple of seasons ago. So I think individually they do need to prop the squad up. If you compare it to the team that had like the likes of bloody Rafinha and there was Jorginho Ruta, Crescencio Somerville, blah, blah, blah. I don't think this team has those players, which it does concern me a little bit. Maybe it's a bit more of an easy way of looking about it, in that I'm identifying players that just don't have the individual quality that was once there. And Leeds fans might scoff at it, but let's be honest, I think this squad isn't as good as it was last season. I think, as I say, it needs that individual quality to edge tight games. You look at the amount of chances they missed this season. Can they go into the Premier League with Joel Pirro as their main forward? I don't think they can. Patrick Bamford, definitely not. I think they need a goalkeeper, a couple of strikers, a playmaker, and maybe another centre-back, because Pascal Struijk's injury record is starting to concern me as well. So I think there are a fair few players short. and they need to have a very busy summer.
Yeah, well, I think everything you said there is perfectly fair, Justin. I did do an entire YouTube video on this very question, so I encourage everyone to watch that for my detailed take on how Leeds will do back in the Premier League. But here's the streamlined version of that. Leeds will 100% have the best chance of staying up out of the promoted sides next season, no matter who else gets promoted, because their squad is the most ready for the Premier League. Yes, it needs strengthening a fair bit over the summer, but I think the recruitment that they've done over the past 12 months gives me encouragement that they will do well in that regard. And they're also possibly the strongest ever side financially heading into the Prem from the Championship because of the size of the club, because of Red Bull, money earned from player sales over the past 12 months, etc. So there's a lot of ticks in boxes there, and there's a decent chance they'll be the first newly promoted side to stay up in the Premier League in 3 seasons. I think they would have been better off getting promoted last season, don't get me wrong, because I think that squad was better than this one, but it is what it is. The big concern for me I have regarding their survival chances, and I've mentioned this many times before, is Daniel Farke, because his Premier League record is absolutely atrocious. Norwich got battered on both occasions when he was there last time, and he's got by far the lowest win percentage in Premier League history for any manager who's been in charge of more than 25 games. I think tactically at the top level, he's lacking. He relies on individuals, and I worry for Leeds if he's leading them into the season. But he's the big negative for me. I think almost every other aspect of Leeds is positive, aside from obviously the fact that newly promoted teams in recent years have struggled quite badly in the Premier League.
It's bloody Paul Warne all over again, isn't it? You know, the constant debating we had over Paul Warne being a League One messiah, and then being absolutely hopeless in the Championship, and then Daniel Farke, I think, is pretty much the same Championship messiah, but almost completely hopeless in the Premier League. There's a big decision that needs to be made here, and that, you know, is Daniel Farke the right man to lead Leeds into the Premier League? It seems harsh to change him. I think he does deserve a chance. Mainly because this Leeds team has been by far the best defensive team that he's overseen. You know, his Norwich teams oversaw a lot of chaotic games where it was just outscore the opponent. This Leeds team has definitely not been that. You know, it's been a case of they've not killed games enough sometimes, despite scoring 89 goals this season. So, yeah, maybe we have seen an adaptation of Daniel Farke. Maybe it's one that will suit the Premier League, but I think history shows us that's not really been the case. But that being said, I think he's deserved an opportunity to see what he can do up in the top flight. It's a task, though. It's a task. I really do think that's the case.
Do you think it'd be the most surprising thing on earth if Leeds were to say, thank you, Daniel, for getting us promoted, but we want to try someone else in the Premier League over the summer?
No, it wouldn't. It would be harsh, but it's football at the end of the day, isn't it? Like, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I think a new manager would give them the best chance of staying in the Premier League, who's got experience of being a top flight manager. I mean, Daniel Farke has that, but we're talking about getting a lot out of a team. You got Andoni Iraola and his Rayo Vallecano exploits. No one thought they'd materialise and benefit Bournemouth in much ways more than Gary O'Neill, but they have, and that's what we're talking about here. We need a manager who can, has got a history of overachieving at top flight level and outperforming what is expected of him at top flight level. Daniel Farke's not done that yet, but like I said, I think he's earned the opportunity to see what he can do. But I don't think Leeds can really take a risk here. So it'll be an interesting, I think, 5 or 6 weeks after the Championship season is finished.
Interesting. Very, very quickly, Justin. Are Stoke back in trouble again? Just going back to Leeds' 6-0 win over them. Because we thought they were just about safe, but now they're only 4 points above the relegation zone again.
Oh yeah, I had a lot, because I've suggested that Stoke are in trouble for a long time this season, and they have surprised me of how much of an upturn in performances that they've had. So I had a lot of Stoke fans, or a few, saying, "Oh, good prediction, mate," and then they get hammered 6-0 literally hours after. I think everyone's been a bit complacent here in suggesting and assuming Stoke are just safe. 4 points is a nice gap between them and the bottom 3, but it's 4 points. There's 6 points to play for. I think they are safe, but yeah, it's your bum squeaking a little bit.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people talking about it over the past 24 hours, but I think a lot of people haven't considered that because Derby and Hull are playing each other, mathematically that makes it very difficult for Stoke to actually go down. It's definitely still possible, but they're lucky that's the case. But yeah, it might be a slightly more nervy final 2 games than they certainly expected. But yeah, well, we'll see how they get on there. Justin, we'll have a quick break. After that, we'll talk about the relegation battle in the Championship, which has got a lot more juicier over the past 24 hours. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. So we've talked about the top of the Championship. It's time to look towards the bottom, because one team definitely in trouble is Cardiff City. It's after they drew 1-1 at home to Oxford United. This was their first match since sacking Omar Ritza on Saturday, Justin, and they put Aaron Ramsey in charge for the final 3 games of the season, which wasn't really a surprising decision, was it, Justin?
Well, for Risa going or Ramsey to be in the hot seat, I think Risa had to go, didn't he? Things got untenable. I think that interview he had with that journalist pretty much sealed the deal. It's obviously a surprise to see Aaron Ramsey in the helm, mainly because Aaron Ramsey's 34 with him in a Football Manager simulation. For goodness' sake, It's a strange scenario, but I think that Cardiff, they've got no cards left to play, have they? That's the position we're in. Cardiff, they're a club that's unmanageable. And now we don't have a manager in charge. We've got a player. That's the situation that they've got. So it's a remarkable set of circumstances for Cardiff. Did see some reaction, some improvement against Oxford, but I think that might have come a bit too late.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I'm thinking, Justin. It's more of a surprise, really, that they left it this late into the season, because they've been sinking for a fair few weeks now. So it was a bit odd that a loss away at Sheffield United was the straw which broke the camel's back all of a sudden. But I don't know, maybe they were almost writing that game off as one that they were going to lose, and they wanted to give Ramsey an easier, in quotation marks, first game. I don't know, but with the Ramsey appointment, my initial thought was, are they just making the same mistake again, putting a manager with little to no managerial experience in charge? But I was unaware that Ramsey has actually done his coaching badges. He's got the second highest UEFA licence, and Craig Bellamy even spoke about him earlier in the season, predicting Ramsey to go on to coach at a higher level. So that's fairly encouraging for Cardiff, but he's been properly thrown in at the deep end here, hasn't he? And, well, no one will be blaming him if Cardiff do go down. The damage may have already been done, really, for Cardiff, might it? Because Oxford's only goal came from a 35-yard screamer by Cameron Brannigan, which ended up also being their only shot on target. And when something like that is happening to you, you know the footballing gods aren't on your side. And look, Cardiff were the only side in the bottom 5 not to win on Easter Monday. It leaves them 3 points from safety, and it does mean Cardiff will be officially relegated next weekend if Derby or Luton better their results. However, if Derby equal their results, they will put down anyway, because Derby have a much better goal difference. So relegation is beckoning for Cardiff City, Justin. It is,
and it's a sad state of affairs, isn't it, that we've got to this point in a season that I think was approached with a hell of a lot of optimism. Obviously, Errol Bullitt guided Cardiff to a 12th place finish last season, and now they're on the verge of relegation. It's such an indictment, a poor indictment on the club, and I think this could have been avoided had they have been a little bit more decisive in the moments that they should have been more decisive. At the point where they sack Errol Bullitt, Omar Rees has come in and done a decent job as interim. Give him a few weeks. Give yourselves a few weeks. That's all you should be taking when choosing to appoint a different manager. I think it's too much of a long period of time to expect a manager to come in and do a job, especially when you leave it so long to commit to him. So already, Omar Rees was under a cloud. And again, you don't bring in an experienced manager who needs to be experienced in Cardiff circumstances, because, as I said, the club feels unmanageable. I think this group of players that they've got is better than what we're getting. I think that's the important point I need to make. There's not been any confidence since, I don't know, maybe the first game of the season. I can't remember this last time this Cardiff team looked like they displayed some confidence. Maybe the South Wales derby. It's just been an absolute shit show, and you can only point the fingers upstairs. Sometimes you can blame a manager, but I can't blame Omar Ritza for not being experienced enough. He shouldn't have been in the hot seat anyway. Simple. The board has to take responsibility for this situation, and I don't think they will, because they don't. They never do.
Yeah. And it could leave them in a situation where they actually finish bottom, Justin, because there's a good chance now that they actually finish bottom of the pile with Plymouth picking up, which would be some achievement, really, wouldn't it? But the bottom line is, you're asking a side who have won 5 in 31 league games. They probably need to win both of their last 2 to stand a realistic chance to stay up. It's a big ask. So the reality is the damage may have already been done for Cardiff City. And that's not just this season. We're talking about over several years, because Cardiff have been so poorly run for a long time, as you're alluding to, and it's always felt destined relegation to happen at some point. A good example of how poorly run they've been is appointing Mowbray and taking so long to sack him. So, barring an end-of-season miracle, Cardiff will be going down, but absolutely no one can argue that it would be undeserved, because they've been circling that drain for a long, long time, haven't they? But could one side potentially joining Cardiff in League One be Oxford United, Justin? Because they're somehow back in trouble as well. We put them in the bracket of just about there 2 or 3 weeks ago, but after 4 of the bottom 5 won, they're only 3 points from safety again, Justin. It's
relentless down there. It is absolutely relentless. I can't imagine the likes of sort of Ruben Selles, John Eustace, obviously Gary Rowett. I can't imagine what they're thinking or going through on a day-by-day basis, because there's not been any releasing pressure on them at all. There's not been a week where you can just go, oh, it's just been every week there's something going, there's something riding on it, and it's horrendous. And that 3-point cushion, I think, heading into the final games, it's a nice to have. And they're playing against 2 teams that've got nothing to play for as well, which is important. I think worrying, though, that Cameron Brannigan hammer, probably one of the goals of the season, by the way. That being the only shot on target they had, it's not a nice sort of habit to have. That being said, Gary Rowett has said they're not safe yet. They're not anywhere near safe, was the phrase he used, actually. So I think that sort of, he knows the situation, and that's a good thing. You know, he's not sort of debating the topic. He's said, like, we're not safe. And I think that realisation, a lot of managers can take heed from that. I've not seen Paul Heckingbottom say this, for example, and they need to, Preston. So yeah, Gary Rowett's going in with the right mindset.
Yeah, well, he's going to say that, isn't he? Because he doesn't want his players to take their foot off the gas with, 2 games to go. But like we were saying about Stoke just a second ago, Oxford are lucky that Derby and Hull are playing each other, because otherwise I would say they're in big, big trouble. I think that fixture does help them out quite considerably. Doesn't rule them out, though, because got to keep in mind Derby and Hull have got much better goal differences, and if Luton get a win and a draw, then Oxford in trouble massively. Oxford have got Sunderland at home next, which isn't a bad game, because Sunderland are currently having perhaps the worst preparation for the playoffs that we've ever seen. And then they've got Swansea away on the final day, which is tricky because they're now somehow the form team in the division. But 1 win and Oxford are officially safe. And that's all they need to do at this stage. But they must be thinking to themselves, how the hell have we been dragged back into this? We were just about to put our feet up, for God's sake. Derby County got just their 3rd away win of the season, away at West Brom, beating them 3-1. And what a time to get it. Of the 4 wins for the bottom 5, this is the most surprising one of all, isn't it, just now? I didn't give Derby much chance here at all.
I gave them no hope. The players were flat on their backs after that Luton defeat on Friday. But accountability was there. They rose to the occasion. And I think, just a really important point, to go to the Hawthorns and win is a very difficult thing to do. Doesn't matter who's in charge, whether it's Carlos Corberán or Tony Mowbray. The Hawthorns is a really difficult place to go for any team. So for Derby to go there and win 3-1, I think is just an amazing feat. But there was individuals there who just stood up and were counted. Sondre Langas was brilliant in defence. He's playing with an injury and he put a shift in. Nathaniel Mendes-Lang making sure of the 3 points after what John Eustace said, he fractured his eye socket on Friday. Josh Vickers with an incredible save in the first half. Individuals stood up here after so many let themselves down against Luton. And again, they put their fate back in their own hands, which for me just keeps changing. I can't fucking keep up.
That's the relegation battle, just the championship in general, really, isn't it? But yeah, this result almost makes up for the loss on Luton on Friday, because they were brilliant. Yes, I know West Brom are having a pretty miserable end to the season, but Derby knew this was a massive game even before the results came out from elsewhere, and they showed it with their fight. They were first to every loose ball, defended for their lives. It was excellent. So a huge performance, a huge result in the relegation battle. Imagine if they lost, Justin. They'd be in a world of bother, wouldn't they? But they're still outside the bottom three on goal difference. So their fate is very much in their own hands still.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think what we've seen is the players can stand up and do it, but they can really bottle it hard as well. But it's still in their control. The whole game becomes the biggest, I think, in the club's recent history for me. I think they obviously have to win. With Luton in form, Luton won 5 of the last 10, and they're playing against a Coventry side at the weekend, whom I'm not sure could get a result against this Luton team. So Derby need to beat Hull. There's no two ways about it. That's a must win, because not only does it keep Luton sort of at arm's length, but it gets a 2-point advantage or a point advantage on Hull. So it's huge. It's absolutely huge. You can't understate it. It's just whether or not the players turn up for it, because we've seen in big games where they needed to pick up points, they've dropped off and allowed opposition to do the damage, and we can't see that now. Derby have got to be faultless.
Yeah, you're spot on that. The whole game is absolutely massive, and then Derby have got Stoke at home on the final day, who, as we're alluding to, may still be in trouble themselves. So you would be liking this position as a Derby fan. It's essentially 2 cup finals, and possibly winning one of them may be enough for them to secure safety, but we'll wait and see. Quick word on West Brom, Justin, who have sacked Tony Mowbray. After just 4 months in the job, it follows a run of 5 losses in 6. Of course, they've drifted rather badly out of the playoff race right at the end, haven't they? And I think everyone at West Brom appreciates and respects Tony Mowbray, but this just hasn't worked out, has it, Justin?
No, it's not been good enough. It's a shame, winning 5 in 17 is ultimately not quite good enough. I think Tony Mowbray probably on paper was the right appointment. There was a feel good factor there. I think mix that with a manager who does get the best out of teams and improves individuals and bleeds youngsters into the first teams. He's a very good manager, but he's coming to a scenario where it probably needs a lot more time post Carlos Corberan. Obviously, I think the squad's not as good as it obviously has been in previous years because it's rebuilding. But ultimately for Tony Mowbray, results haven't been good enough. Performance haven't been good enough either. And a new direction is clearly needed. It's a shame because Tony Mowbray is the most lovable man, I think, in Championship history. But he's doing a job and he wasn't doing it to the ability he needed to do it to.
Yeah, well, the boos from the West Brom fans after the game, the number of empty seats at the final whistle against Derby, the reaction from supporters on social media. This had to happen, if not now, over the summer, because it's been a very underwhelming end to the season. West Brom have been in the top 6 for more than 3/4 of the season, but it's become very apparent in recent weeks that wasn't going to happen this season. And they've completely lost all the consistency that they had under Carlos Corberan. Which is a real shame, and everyone loves Tony Mowbray. We love him here, Justin. This was his first job after his health problems. We all wanted this one to work, but his task was to secure the playoffs again, and that's not happened. So now it's interesting to see where they go next, because we're sort of still at the start of this new era under the new owner. But they've got to get this appointment right now if they want to continue the kind of track that Carlos Corberan put them on not too long ago. Luton Town recorded back-to-back wins for just the second time this season by beating Bristol City 3-1. We were just saying it was a great time for Derby to get just their 3rd away win of the season. It's an even better time for Luton to get back-to-back wins for just the second time this season, Justin.
Yeah, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. The way they've picked up, I think, is just absolutely remarkable, because they look like a team that was defeated, and again, that deflating defeat just a couple of games ago, mixed with the jubilation at the 3 points against Derby, and then beating one of the form teams in the Championship in Bristol City, and doing it relatively comfortably, by the way. Yeah, the momentum's there, and that's what they need. They're scoring goals, they're defending like it's their last game alive. Yeah, for me, that was the best performance under Matt Bloomfield. They stayed calm again when pressure came. It was edgy in the first half, for example. Didn't look like the goal was going to come, and then it does, and then it's just relief. And when you feel that relief, I think that's when you know that the tides have changed. It's just whether or not Luton can essentially just keep accruing points. But they've shown that they can. It's remarkable set of circumstances we're finding ourselves in. It's just, I've not known anything like it. It's incredible.
Yeah. All the form teams down at the bottom of the table. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? But yeah, Luton were brilliant again. And as I've said before, where has this team been all season? They just look a completely different side to the one who we've been seeing for 9/10 of the past year. And to get this win against a Bristol City side who, of course, have been one of the form teams in the division is just brilliant. And Luton will be wondering how on earth they're still in the bottom three, because just one loss in 8, but still kept in the relegation zone on goal difference. But the way things are going, they must massively fancy themselves with 2 games to go to get out of the mess they're in, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're in a position now where they can beat any team in this division because of that confidence. And again, they've beaten a team fighting for their lives at the bottom of the table, and they've beaten a team fighting to remain in the top 6, or I guess fighting for promotion in Bristol City as well. So there's 2 variables there that they've come up against and they've overcome. And as I say, the simplistic elements of how they play is back. They're fighting every game. They're fighting for every duel. They're clearing things. They made a record amount of clearances against Derby, for goodness sake. They're doing everything they can to make sure that they stay in this division. It's just whether or not it's come too late. They're in that scenario right now. It's like Derby. They've got to be faultless. They've got to keep winning games. Very difficult thing to do. But they've put themselves in a really, really good position. And I think full credit to Matt Bloomfield, who's overturned a complete change in mentality. Change in mentality, I think, is the hardest thing to do in football. When you're used to losing, when you're used to making mistakes, changing it over time is a difficult thing, and Matt Bloomfield's done it. He deserves a hell of a lot of credit for doing that. It's just games are running out. That's it.
Yeah, well, in most circumstances, you would look at the table and say, teams like your Oxfords, your Prestons, your Stokes are safe because 3 points should be enough with 2 games to go, because in most seasons, the relegation battle doesn't have many wins. But this season is different because Luton are in form and they're still in the relegation zone. But that just means the tide is rising higher and higher and sweeping those teams back in who thought they were safe. And so as long as Luton continue playing like they are over the last 2 games, you'd have thought they would overtake someone, because they surely can't keep getting results like they have been and see them not move. Do you know what I mean, Justin? Of course, the added bonus for Luton is that Derby and Hull are playing each other on Saturday, the 2 teams directly above them. So someone's dropping points. Luton need to ensure they take advantage of that. It's going to be tricky because they're facing Coventry, but as Monday showed, anything can happen at this stage of a season. And I mean, on the other hand, a loss and a Derby win really leaves them staring down the barrel. So it's a gigantic weekend down at the bottom of the table. Briefly, Bristol City's situation has barely been affected, despite them losing on Easter Monday. That's because Coventry, Middlesbrough and West Brom all lost. So they just need 1 win to secure a playoff place. They've got Leeds away next, which before wouldn't have been ideal, but Leeds might still be on the piss heading into that game, so who knows? And then they've got Preston at home on the final day. So yeah, Bristol City, their fate is still very much in their hands. 2 penalties from Joe Gallard saw Hull beat Preston 2-1 and boost their survival chances. Just Hull's 5th win at home all season. And there'll be another side looking around at the results elsewhere and be thinking, thank God we got that, Justin.
Yeah, it's a really scary feeling, isn't it? I think when you come away with a massive 3 points and you actually go, oh God, yeah, we needed that. Mainly because if they didn't, they were in trouble. They'd have been, -2, 46 level on, with Derby and Luton, which is absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, you can't say how big a win that was. Again, players are stepping up. But yeah, you look at Nordin Amrabat, for example, who was excellent. He, a player with a lot of experience. Playing amongst a relatively inexperienced group, he set a standard of graft that was rewarded with 3 points. And again, you're looking at sort of Hull's home form. A win at home heading into Derby at home, I think, is just such a huge confidence boost and a reassurance there that they can get 3 points at home, despite this Preston team being in such a weird spot at the moment. But yeah, I think Ruben Sellers again deserves a hell of a lot of praise for piecing together a team that was pieced together in January. It's been a ridiculous run of games, but again, that relentlessness that we're in at the moment, you cannot come up for air. You're in there. It's a battering experience, but look, this is what we've got. You don't win enough games before now, you're in trouble.
I'm surprised you didn't mention the 2 penalties, Justin. I thought they were both pretty soft. Particularly the first one.
Yeah, it's one of those where, because Hull experienced one of the worst penalty calls I think I've seen this season in their previous game, and it cost them, obviously that Johnny Egan handball, I'm not saying it's justified, but there's a balancing out of things here. And unfortunately, it just puts a spotlight on officiating that I think needs to be improved. Simple.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone's disagreeing with you on that. But yeah, I thought Hull were fairly fortunate because of those 2 penalty shouts. But having said that, they had some decent chances away from the penalties, so they probably deserved it. But yeah, it's a big, big win for Hull because, as we say, everyone else winning down there, they could have been could have been right in danger, couldn't they? Maybe even in the relegation zone, because they were losing, of course, at one point in this one. But all attention now turns to that massive game next Saturday against Derby. If Hull win, that's it, they're safe, and a loss would mean they're in a world of bother depending on how Luton get on. So it is absolutely massive. But Justin, Preston North End, are they in danger? Just 2 points won from their last 6, and all of a sudden they're only 3 points above the relegation zone again. Preston, we just assumed would be safe for a long time, but you're looking at the table thinking, hang on a second.
Yeah, I think they are in danger. I think if another 2 weekends go here where Luton and Derby win, they're in trouble. Similarly, Hull only need 1 win to overtake them. Likewise, Oxford just need a point. They've won just 2 league games since the end of January, and they play Plymouth, who are fighting, and Bristol City, who might well be fighting for the top 6 still come the end of the season. This is as precarious as you can get, and I think there's complacency from the players and obviously from the club as well. I think that's quite frightening. One example of that is announcing Ryan Neson's departure. That's my reference to the club being complacent. That doesn't happen until a team or a club is confirmed safe. But they're just not winning enough games. That's on the players, and Paul Heckingbottom feels like he's at his wits end with the players. But still, I didn't see much mention of relegation in any of his interviews that I sort of came across. So yeah, I wouldn't back them to win their next 2 final games, and teams below them are winning. I don't think it's inconceivable that we see Preston get relegated off the back of what we've seen over the past couple of weeks. That's a scary thought.
Yeah. I can't recall too many teams who have looked as on the beach as this Preston side, so much so that they're getting a call from work while they're on the beach saying, can you come back in, please? We desperately need you. Because, yeah, this is a pretty incredible situation where they may actually be in danger. I would say they're possibly even in more danger than Oxford and Stoke, because they have just been so poor for several weeks now. So it's not completely inconceivable. As mentioned earlier, they are one of those teams who have been helped by the fact that Derby and Hull are playing each other, because mathematically that does mean you would need some pretty incredible results for Preston to actually go down. But it's not completely out of the question. So, yeah, a pretty mad scenario that Preston have found themselves in. But it just goes to show how bad they've been for a long time now, that this is the state of their chances of potentially going down. It's incredible, really. And Plymouth, they're not giving up on survival either. They've won their 3rd home game in a row after a 3-1 victory over Coventry. But I mean, it's a shame, really, just in that we had them this low in the running order, because a Plymouth win is always big news. But here we go, the 3rd home win in a row. Remarkable.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I think it's such a shame that this run has come 2 games too late, if that makes sense. I think if it's a 48-game season, we maybe could see Plymouth staying up. But it's one of those seasons, if you like, they'll be looking at back on things. It's a lot of hindsight, and they're going to pinpoint games where points were lost and decisions weren't made. But that being said, Plymouth not being relegated by week 44 after the Wayne Rooney debacle, that's a huge positive. And they're getting 3 points here against a Coventry team who are, again, one of the formed teams since the turn of the year in the Championship. It's an incredible thing, and I think you look at what Muslic has put out there. Mustafa Bundu's come on in leaps and bounds over the past few weeks. Daka Gabi in midfield is looking better and more confident. Defensively, we know what they can do. Ryan Hardy's turned into a goal machine once again. I would still consider Muslic a huge success, despite them maybe just falling short. I think that's the conversation that we're going to be having now with Plymouth, is they're going to fall just short. And I say they beat a team who've won 8 and 13 and have spent a hell of a lot more money than them in doing so in Coventry. it's just a lot of positivity there. I think that we've got about Plymouth compared to the first half of the season where it was negative every week.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree with everything you say there, Justin. If the season was 1 or 2 games longer, then you may be looking at Plymouth thinking they've got a big shout, haven't they? But unfortunately, it is very unlikely that they stay up. They're fighting until the end, but essentially, if Derby or Luton win either of their final 2 games and Hull draw either of their final 2 games, then Plymouth are down because their goal difference is so much poorer. So it's a shame, but they've given a good account of themselves, and as you say, the fact that they haven't been officially relegated with 2 games to go is an achievement in some way, because they were looking like they could be cut adrift by quite a distance not too long ago. And it'll be an achievement in sorts as well if they don't finish bottom, because as we were saying, with Cardiff in the position they're in, there's a chance that that's not the case, which would be pretty impressive in itself. So yeah, Plymouth aren't giving up, even though the tide is slowly submerging them, but fair play to them. It's been a positive end to the season in what has been a pretty miserable season. But we could say that much for sure. Coventry will secure a playoff place next weekend if they better Blackburn, Middlesbrough and Millwall's results. So unlikely that they confirm their playoff place next weekend, but their position hasn't really changed much either, because, as we were alluding to, all the teams in the playoff race lost. So Coventry still looking like they're on course for the top 6, despite this loss right here. But there we go, Justin. We managed to cram an awful lot into that second half of the show, but we got there in the end. There was a lot to talk about in the past 24 hours from across the Championship, but we got there in the end, ladies and gents. But still plenty to play for in these final 2 games of the season, and all attention turns to next weekend in the Championship, which we'll be previewing in the preview show, brought to you by SBK on Friday. So we look forward to seeing you then for that. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.